Welcome to a special Radiohead episode with Fran and Babs on Over Underrated. What is this all about? You might ask yourself. Basically, when recording another podcast, Fran and I realized that we are very different kinds of Radiohead fans. I said to him, I think Hail to the Thief is my favorite Radiohead album. And he said that's where he thought they were going wrong. And I banked that in my mind and said, in future, we should do an episode just focused on Radiohead albums so we can really geek out on it. So it's one for the Radiohead fans. We hope you enjoy, and I'll be back at the end to talk more.
Over Underrated. Sous-évalué. Überschätzt. Överunderskattad. Over Underrated.
Welcome to another episode of Over Underrated. It's me, Fran, and I'm here with my co-host, Babs. How are you doing, Babs?
I am good. Thank you, Fran. Been listening to a lot of different types of music this week. What have you been listening to?
For reasons unknown, I've been listening to quite a lot of Muse.
I've been listening to quite a lot of Muse as well. Because we're guesting on another podcast and having to listen to Muse. But it's been quite nostalgic and funny because you see the comparisons of Muse to Radiohead, which is the theme of today's special episode, what I'm calling an album showdown.
Yes, this is true. Babs has been trying to get Radiohead on the podcast for the past year, and finally her dreams has come true. And
hallelujah,
she is going to be discussing her favorite Radiohead album versus my favorite Radiohead album.
Indeed. So the reason why we're doing it in this way, rather than just talking about Radiohead or finding another band from Oxford, doing Radiohead versus Falls or whatever it is, but let's not rule that out as a future theme. It's because when recording one time, I said to Fran that Hail to the Thief was my favorite Radiohead album, and he looked at me as if I was insane and said something along the lines of, I think actually that's where Radiohead started to go wrong, to which I responded in a very shocked manner. So only today did I get out of him what his favorite Radiohead album was, The Bends. So we're going to do an album comparison showdown and defend our collective choices.
Obviously, you're allowed to agree with me because it's the correct response. But I'm sure there's some people out there who like to be a bit different and, go for the noughties Radiohead. But unfortunately, they're all incorrect. But we can have a good time now and pretend to make this a fair fight. So we're first discussing The Bends because it came out first. I believe it came out in 1995. Am I correct? Even looking at Wikipedia?
Without looking at Wikipedia, I think you're correct.
Beautiful. And this was a massive departure. Well, I guess not massive. They're still playing guitars, but this was not the same band or Pablo Honey. They had progressed into a new Radiohead, and this is when, for me, they came into my world because I was aware, like many people, of Creep, but I had never listened to Pablo Honey. Mm-hmm. And when The Bends came out and I heard Street Spirit, it's when I learned about Radiohead, and I purchased the album on CD and fell in love with the music, and then fell in love with the music videos, which were everywhere in 1995. How did you come across The Bends, Babs?
So I will talk a bit more about how I got into Radiohead when we talk about Hail to the Thief, but it was later than that. So I only became aware of Radiohead in the noughties. And I think I worked backwards to The Bends, possibly from OK Computer, or it might have been even Kid A Amnesiac first. So I don't think I knew any songs from The Bends until I went to listen to The Bends, because I wasn't living in the UK anymore. It wasn't on my radar, and in 95, 97 I was in the UK and I was a kid, but it didn't quite permeate. I think on Now 37 there is Paranoid Android from OK Computer, but I didn't see the music videos, I didn't see the songs, and I like The Bends. I think The Bends is a good album. It's not one of my favorites, and I do feel a little bit that the people who say that The Bends is their favorite album, like, a version of Radiohead that is a bit less adventurous. What did you say in your message to me, Fran? That you like it because it's not Radiohead playing, quote, calculator music. Mm-hmm. But I do think it is an album where the bangers are bangers, but there's actually quite a few songs that I skip.
oddly for Radiohead, in the Bends, I think the slow tracks are not as good as the fast tracks, which is very different in their further albums. But I guess this is a band progressing. They're shifting their standard rock elements and trying new things. And, this is the album that perfectly brings itself onto OK Computer with the different textures and less, rock punch in the air anthems. But if it's talking about an album that I enjoy, as in like I can put it on in any mood and get something from it, then I can put on the Bends. With some rated albums, I have to be in the right headspace and the right mood. It's like this. Yes, it's more mainstream. I'm not scared of mainstream. Sometimes you have to enjoy a fine wine, and that's fair enough. But the Bends is a delicious full fat Coke, and sadly, I drink more Coke than wine.
Do you think usual anti-capitalists Radiohead would appreciate the comparison with soft drink beverages that you're making here?
I think Radiohead would be a Pepsi more than Coke. I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's call them the Dr Pepper. The Dr Pepper.
Oh no, not tastes horrible. I hate cinnamon madness.
Okay, Iron Brew. We're happy with Iron Brew.
Do you know? I think I've had Iron Brew twice in my life, and it was fine.
Okay.
I'd say they're more a Sprite or 7-Up. Yeah, it's like quenching your thirst, satisfying. Mainstream, but a little bit under the radar.
If there's any soft drink manufacturers, get in touch. We're dying for a sponsor. We love all fizzy drinks.
This is not the direction this conversation would go at all.
Anyway, speaking of fizzy drinks, let's talk about the Bends. This has no relation. So, I have chosen my 5 favorite tracks of the album to try and persuade Babs. I mean, it's not going to happen. It's too late. But I will try now to persuade her into loving the Bends as much as I do. So I've chosen 5 tracks, starting with the Bends, the song, and also the name of the album. And I can see instantly why Babs wouldn't enjoy it, because this is probably the most stadium rock track Radiohead have ever written. From the first guitar wang, it could be, Bon Jovi. But
sorry, did you say guitar wang? I just need to add that to
guitar
my
wang.
vocabulary.
It's
guitar
like,
wang. Okay,
we've all discussed our favorite guitar wangs. But there's something underneath that persona. Like there is like the middle 8 is beautiful. I could wish it was the 60s. And then I love the elements of the piano that come in. And I saw them live. I think they did this in 2001, the first time I saw them, and I was shocked that they did any songs from the Bends. And then when it goes into the middle 8, and then it rumbles into like a guitar solo from Johnny. That bit that always makes my hair stand on end. And also it showcases Tom's voice brilliantly. He doesn't tend to sing proper rock and roll songs, but it proves that he can do it. He isn't the singer he is today. Today he can be a bit. But back then he could still belt out those tracks, and I just think it's every time I would meet someone at work who was like 17 years old and had never been aware of this Radiohead, I'd always put on the Bends and say, this is the band Radiohead, and they'd be completely in shock that was that was Radiohead. And it's nice to remind people that they weren't the band from 2011. They were quite a different band in the mid 90s, and some people would even call them a Britpop band back in 1995.
And I can see that. So I think the Bends is one of my least favorite songs from the Bends, but I will absolutely agree with you on the middle 8 and the lyrics and everything. And we're not talking about it, but it has similar vibes to, I think, Anyone Can Play Guitar from Pablo Honey, especially him saying, I wish it was the 60s, I wish it could be happy. It just reminds me of him going, I want to be Jim Morrison, in a very amusing way, which is very anti-Radiohead. But I mean, that's on the same album that Creep is, right? So I feel they've always been contradictions. And this song as well, having sort of analyzed it and the lyrics a bit more, it is kind of, I guess, the anti-Creep, because he's talking about, I want to live and breathe, I want to be part of the human race. Moving away from, he wants to get away from the feelings of alienation and move towards something. So what do you know why I'm asking, because I genuinely didn't know why is it called the Bends? I know that Tom York has a fear of cars and that's a big theme in OK Computer, but does he have a fear of drowning?
So I've always thought that the Bends, the song, was about the band and him being disillusioned, becoming successful, and him being nervous and being sick of being that big.
Right. Okay. So it could be a reaction to the craziness that was Creep, because famously there's that MTV video of them playing Creep in a house in a swimming pool with lots of people dancing around it, and then they just absolutely go mental because they're not happy about it.
Yeah, so I've always heard that this song is about Radiohead becoming that band in America and not knowing how to deal with it, and getting the bends from the success. Tom's never been comfortable being famous, as we all know, I believe.
I mean, as I mentioned, was obsessed with Tom York, but I never want to meet him. I really never want to meet him.
I had a story. I don't know if it's true or off. So a guy went to university. He was from Oxford, and he claims in the early noughties he saw Tom York at a bus stop, which is why I don't think it's true. And he walked towards Tom, and Tom shuffled away in a weird, strange way. Because
he thought this is a crazy fan.
Yeah, but he wouldn't go on a bus. Come on. I think he's a millionaire back then, so I think he would have got a taxi. Come on.
I mean, firstly, again, Tom York afraid of cars. Secondly, they're quite, I mean, like the airbag and pull me out of the crash in OK Computer and Lucky, that's related to him being in a car crash and him being scared of cars.
So you hated Karma Police video, surely?
Oh, well, I guess, but was he in the car? Was he in a studio? We don't know. We'll have to go and check. I saw that recently for the first time in ages. Such a good video, such a good song. Yeah, I can believe that Tom York was at a bus stop, but just not properly disguised, perhaps. But maybe, I mean, you hear the stories of like Rihanna got the tube to her O2 concert and stuff like that. Why wouldn't Tom York get a bus in Oxford?
Yeah, maybe in Oxford he thinks he's not likely. He's not the sort of person who's on Loose Women, so he may think that the general man may not recognize his face.
Can you imagine? Well, yeah, similarly, so I live in Brussels, where Stromae is from, and he keeps going to one of my local cafes, and it's quite, I don't even want to say which one, because it's precisely quite nice that he goes there. Everyone's pretty chilled about it. I've only seen like one person asking for his photo so far, and Fran has asked me to ask him to be on the podcast. I will do my best. So some people are more chilled about it. So I don't think Tom York, I think he'd be grumpy, but I don't think he would be sort of necessarily reclusive, misanthropic, but right in if we're wrong.
But if I have to meet a member, it would always be Ed. Sure.
Oh, yeah, the fittest, absolutely.
Yeah, of course, the fittest. But he just seems like the most laid back, down to earth sort of nice guy.
He is such a gentle soul of a man, it seems like to me, because I was obsessed with Ed O'Brien. Like I made photo collages of Ed O'Brien on Microsoft Paint and printed it out and put it on my door, and it went on Ed O'Brien fan websites because yes, I was an obsessive Radiohead fan. But I actually, having been mostly a Radiohead fan in the early to mid noughties, I, then kind of losing it a little bit. I hadn't seen that many videos of him talking or anything like that. But he was on the Adam Buxton podcast, and now I follow him on Instagram. He just seems like such a genuine, nice person. And he's really into Brazil and lived in Brazil and possibly even speaks Portuguese, and named one of his sons Salvador, which is, pretty Portuguese name. So, can't help but love Ed O'Brien.
And even over lockdown, he was teaching people how to play Creep, so I thought it was nice.
Was he?
Yeah,
I missed this.
I think he'd be above that, but now he's teaching people how to play songs by Radiohead.
Oh, good for you, Ed.
Good old Ed. So moving on to my next track, Planet Telex. I just probably started it with that since it's the introduction.
Yeah, the order I thought was unusual, but there we go.
I kept changing it. So I guess this is the perfect introduction to an album and the perfect introduction to the new Radiohead. Like if you had only heard Creep and you put this on, you would not be expecting it. There has some awesome Brian Eno-esque sort of like synths that come in, like a rumble, and then a piano stab down. And then, it's just an outstanding track. It didn't sound like many other songs of the day or even on the album. And then it does bring in a guitar riff, which is as brilliant. And I think if the track would work just electronically or just on a guitar, I think it's a brilliant track. And I still think that 26 years later, everything is still broken, sadly, Tom.
26, just fucking hell. Yeah, I think this is a really good album opener. So it's not one of my favorite songs, but I think it is a near perfect album opener because it's just so, I don't know, whooshy is what I'm going to use as the as the terms. It's just, yeah, a very good introduction. And yeah, it starts wistfully, and then when Tom's voice comes in, like it almost doesn't quite seem like he's there, and then suddenly the guitar comes in, bang. So it's a very good introduction to what the album is going to sound like, and yeah, constantly in motion. Yeah, I think this is a really good song. Do you know what Planet Telex is at all?
No one really knows, unfortunately, according to the internet.
Sounds like a fax service or something to me. But yeah,
I always thought that it was it played when you saw them. I don't think I ever heard them play it ever again.
I don't know. I don't know what was played when I saw them, so I will go and look on setlist.fm to let you know.
Because they'd always play like the same sort of tracks, I think, from the bands. It'd always be Fake Past the Trees, Street Spirit, and My Iron Lung. They're always the three songs they ever played, like when I saw them. But I think this is an amazing intro, and it's definitely opened other gigs later on in their career with it as well.
I think it would be a really good gig opener. I agree.
Especially when it became more electronic.
I need to go and take a look. Yeah.
I think that, they could have done a more electronic version of it later on in their career. It would have fit in nicely with the 2000 era.
So I've got the set list in front of me. So I saw Radiohead supported by Back for Lashes in June 2008 in Victoria Park. I'm trying to see if there are any Bends songs on there. I don't think there is. Oh, well, there's the Bends. There's the Bends, My Iron Lung. And that's it.
It's strange how they kept doing the Bends, because like it is kind of a nod to the past. It's kind of like an 80s vibe to it. So I'm surprised they weren't a bit embarrassed of the sort of stadium rock sort of sounds. I'm surprised they did do like Planet Telex, because it's a bit more forward thinking than the Bends. But hey, I mean,
but maybe it was only more towards the Kid A Amnesiac sessions that they did more you learned how to play electronic things better live. So maybe it was just a bit more tricky to play live. I don't know, to make it sound as good as it does on the record live.
When I saw them 2001 at the Homecoming gig in Oxford. I think that's when they first did the Kid A and Amnesiac live, and it was a lot more guitar than it was. Everything sounded better live than on the album. I think I've got like a bootleg of that album, and it's magnificent. And when it did How to Disappear Completely, I cried.
Oh, nice.
And they went to end it by playing Motion Picture Soundtrack, and the keyboard broke. So Tom York kicked over the keyboard and says, "Fuck it," and then they played Creep, and everyone lost their shit because they hadn't played it in 5 years.
I mean, in 2001 as well. Yeah, that is very...
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Supported by Sigur Rós, Beck, and Supergrass. Not a bad gig.
Wow. Yeah, they're not particularly bands that I saw Beck in Ancienne Belgique the same week that I saw Tom York solo in Ancienne Belgique, and that was quite good. And obviously they've got Nigel Godrich in common, but there we go. Okay, so what's your next pick?
Your next is a track that everyone knows. It is Street Spirit, Fade Out. And yeah, this was the track that introduced me to this album, mainly because of the beautiful video, which I'm sure we've all seen.
What a beautiful video.
We've all jumped in slow motion to try and copy it. But yeah, I mean, this is, I guess, maybe the cliche Radiohead sound that people would always think of when they thought of Radiohead, like that Jeff Buckley vocal floating on the top of those arpeggios. I can imagine people who hate Radiohead will think of this being every Radiohead song, but it's not. I mean, like Radiohead have a vast array of different sounds, but yeah, I mean, you can enjoy this. You don't have to be crying next to a window watching the rain.
It is a good soundtrack for that. If you do want to do that.
It does work. And the ending is magnificently beautiful. It's a really dark lyrics. I think it's quite a depressing lyrics, but yeah, it's ultimately beautiful. And Even for Darkness did a pretty good cover of it as well.
No, you're kidding me.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. When they first came out, because they didn't have many songs, they'd always finish their gigs with Street Spirit.
That
I guess because he's got that high vocal. I guess it kind of worked for them a little bit.
I mean, like, I can feel death, can see its beady eyes, doesn't seem like quite Darkness lyrics in the same way. Fran, I'm totally with you. You know, you said that on the bends, you don't like the slower songs. I agree, but this is a standout.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. It's simple, but it's not simple. And I know this from repeatedly trying to play it on guitar. I am not very good on the guitar. I tried, I failed. It really, the kind of accents are so subtle, like the little electronics and the harmonizing of Tom York with himself. But there's such an impact when you're listening to the song. Like, I think if it was just the guitar, it's already pretty powerful. But then the accents come in, and yeah, absolutely, like you said, crying by a window is something that works. And I think it really exposes Tom York's voice, because Tom York has a very vulnerable and high voice. Tom York has a very vulnerable and high voice, and actually that's what a lot of people don't like about him. Like, I remember trying to get people at school into Radiohead, because I was really into Radiohead in the early noughties when they weren't very popular in Luxembourg particularly, and so many people, a bit like Placebo, be like, oh no, but his voice, like, I don't like it. And it's like, well, no, but it's beautiful, because it's fragile but strong, and it's really shown here. And he goes high and he goes low, and yeah, it's just fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's maybe the first time you hear him using his voice as an instrument rather than just delivering lyrics at the end. He's climbing up and down, and it really matches Johnny's guitar lines.
Over underrated. Sous-évalué. Überschätzt. Överunderskattad. Over underrated.
So then, moving to a different direction, we've gone into one of the heavier songs, and the first track we all heard, well, I didn't, I was too young, but they released this first on the EP, The Iron Lung. And
great EP.
Yeah, this shows the two sides of Radiohead. It's got that heavy rock, it's got those quieter moments, and this is a track I knew they continued to playing. I assumed they enjoy it live, but reading about it, I've heard that this is about Tom York struggling to write a single. Right,
because that's what I was going to ask you. Like, what is the iron lung a metaphor for?
Well, yeah, I think that Radiohead is his iron lung, and apparently he hated writing a song, which is interesting why they've been playing it live for the past 20 years. So maybe he grew to like it. But yeah, I mean, that it's got the opening, like, I can't do my version of it, unfortunately, for copyright reasons. But yeah, so, you know, it's a glorious track. And again, with the bend, if there's a whiny teenager saying that Radiohead are boring, I played my iron lung and say, no, they're not, you prick. Enjoy this. It's,
absolutely brilliant. And you mentioned the Iron Lung EP, which has the Trickster, which I think is one of the best Radiohead B-sides of all time. The quieter bits are good, and then when the comes in, you're just like, what the fuck? Who is Uncle Bill? Who is the Belisha Beacon? What is he talking about? It wrong fits you. And again, I think a bit like, while Planet Telex is a good introduction to the album, I think Iron Lung represents the album as a whole, like all the different elements. So yeah, again, what I don't have anything original to say apart from, yeah, Fran, great choice.
Do you think, is this the heaviest they ever got as a band?
Oh, well, see, for me, I can't help but go back to Anyone Can Play Guitar, because that just has Tom York going, I want to be Jim Morrison. But in guitars, perhaps, although are there other band songs? I mean, because Just could be, right? I mean, similar, but maybe not as crunchy.
I remember being 15, this kind of scared me, like it was a bit too hard for me.
It was a bit too much for you. Was it your sensitive ears? Well, actually, because you from Pablo Honey, but again, it's because his voice, I mean, it goes so mad that it breaks. That's kind of similarly kind of tricks you. You know, you're like, okay, it's starting, it's slow, and then suddenly down. So yeah, I think that could be a contender, but definitely, yeah, among the top.
And then we just mentioned it, so I ended up my playlist with probably one of the most mainstream singles, maybe Just.
Yeah, most well-known songs, I would say.
Yeah. Again, if you're a teenager in the 90s, you saw the video, and we'll all ask each other at school, what's the guy at the end, do you reckon? I still haven't thought of any. What do you think?
Well, you're not meant to know, isn't it? It's meant to be like lost in translation or whatever it is. It's up to interpretation. But have you not read any conspiracy theories?
I've not read any conspiracy theories
about just. I mean, given that there is the music video where so basically, if you don't know the music video, it's a guy is lying on the floor and everyone is wondering why he's lying on the floor, and a crowd gathers and they keep asking him, you know, what's going on, and then someone asks, why are you lying on the floor, and he says why, but it's kind of there's no subtitles saying it, and then the final scene is everyone is lying on the floor. So yeah, check it out, guys, on youtube.com.
And I just want to add that, you know, I think it's got one of the most killer choruses of all time, really. You do it to you. That doesn't never happen much.
It's catchy, but it's not annoying. And isn't it that this is the song where basically Johnny Greenwood tried to see how many chords he could get into one song? It was like a competition between him and Tom York. I think so, yeah. Because there's always been a bit of competition between Johnny Greenwood and Tom York, naturally. I mean, Tom York's the frontman, but Johnny Greenwood's the mad genius. And I think, Tom York talked about he only wanted to do film soundtracks because Johnny Greenwood had quite a lot of success doing them. So it seems healthy, but it doesn't surprise me. And I haven't counted, but I think there's a lot of chords there indeed.
And what a guitar solo at the end. A knuckle crunching guitar solo from Johnny will always be one of the outstanding moments of Just at the end of it.
Great guitar solo. Great voice from Tom York as well, going mad, you know, do it to yourself, you know, he goes for it. He really, really goes for it here, as with a lot of songs on this album as well. So
overall though, I will always skip Bulletproof. I will skip Nice Dreams. I think they're a bit sloppy. I think that Bones is a killer track. Sulk's got a great riff to it. High and Dry, I did adore, not so much anymore, it's a bit wishy-washy. Fake Plastic Trees, I like when they do it live.
I
hate it.
I absolutely hate, really, I think it's probably my least favorite Radiohead song, just because it's the one that gets the most adoration. It's so boring and simple in a bad way, and just I don't know, it almost feels like, I don't know, Tom York's gone to the let's pull some heartstrings club to learn how to write a song. I think the only nice thing is, you know, you can hear his voice break. Hang on, I'm now even confused if that's in plate. If I could be who you want to, okay, if you can feel the emotion, nice, wonderful. But I think they're overplayed, and I think for me, representation of why it annoys me when people say that Benz is their favorite Radiohead album, because I think Radiohead, as much as there are good songs on this, are so much more than this.
When I was asked what my favorite Radiohead albums were, I said I go back and forth between the Benz and OK Computer, because it's all down to, I mean, if I'm in a sit down, relaxed, and just listen to some quality music, I'll put on OK Computer. If I'm driving, I'll put on the Benz. If I want to have a sing song, I'm going to put on the Benz. I don't do many sing songs, to be fair.
No, it's a nice image.
And also I always felt like growing up that the Benz to me was more of a forgotten album, and it was all about OK Computer, and I kind of felt like, well, no, the Benz was also very good. So I always felt like I was fighting for the Benz growing up, because it seemed to get sort of like washed away. Like anything before OK Computer wasn't like as good.
I think in terms of critical acclaim, for sure, OK Computer was wanked over to oblivion, which I'm sure is how any critic would describe it. But actually, looking on Spotify in terms of plays, like the most played song on OK Computer is Karma Police with 292 million views. But the next one is No Surprises, and that has less plays than High and Dry. And Paranoid Android has less plays than Fake Plastic Trees. So critically, probably. But having got into Radiohead post OK Computer and the Benz, I definitely felt that OK Computer had more of a critic's adoration. But the Benz, really, people mentioned a lot too. And I'm repeating myself, but it's like I can't help but feel that it's like, the Benz is the album that like the proper rock bands liked, and then, you know, Radiohead got into a bit of electronic shite, and then that was the end of them, and nothing was ever as good. But yeah, maybe I'm simplifying it a bit too much.
I think that if you were around in the mid-noughties, it was an album that, you know, the wanker in the pub would play his acoustic guitar and start playing High and Dry a lot. That might put people off. Have you heard Liberty X version of High and Dry?
I was literally about to say because we mentioned it in the Liberty X episode. Yeah, like actually, I think I do prefer it because at least there's harmonies in the Liberty X version. It's not just one note, and there's good old Kevin, my favorite Kevin. So yeah,
I think actually, without knowing about it, that the first Radiohead song I possibly heard was "Fake Plastic Trees" because it's in the soundtrack to Clueless, and I discovered afterwards when I bought the soundtrack. I thought, oh, but looking back, it's such a weird fit, like Fake Plastic Trees being on the Clueless soundtrack.
I mean, Radiohead are in Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah,
They're in Twilight. You know, they are in weird positions, but I think I don't know from when, maybe from OK Computer. But in the US underground, Radiohead have always been, you know, very popular in the US. You know, I think with the college radio type thing. I had a friend who told me that he traveled through the US and he was really into music. And he said, like, I feel like almost everyone who I met, like on a train or a bus, you know, when they found out I was British, would tell me how much I loved Radiohead, which is not at all the impression you have of Americans. But I think musically minded Americans really, really do like them. And I mean, yeah, I think the listens go to show that. Yeah, in case you're wondering what the rankings are. So Radiohead have 14.3 million monthly listeners and they're 289th in the world on Spotify.
Hello, this is Still Any Good, the podcast where we run the risk of ruining our childhoods by revisiting fondly remembered films.
Have you ever wondered if the movies you enjoyed as a child have passed the test of time? Are they disappointingly awful, or are they still any good?
We've looked at Superman,
Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure,
Big Trouble in Little China,
Basic Instinct,
Face Off,
Trading Places,
Police Academy 2,
Honey, I Shrunk the Kids,
Bugsy Malone,
Escape to Victory,
Look Who's Talking,
The Man with Two Brains,
Kindergarten Cop,
Short Circuit,
Home Alone,
Smokey and the Bandit,
Tango and Cash.
So are these films still any good? Join me, Robert Johnson, in my cosy living room,
And me, Christopher Webb, in my garage, and find out for yourselves.
It's a lovely garage.
so we move through the years to 2003, and Hail to the Thief.
Right. So Hail to the Thief. So I'll tell you my Radiohead journey. They were my absolute favorite band when I was a teenager. I have the most records by them compared to anyone else, singles, vinyl that I never listened to, etc., books, DVDs, posters and pictures on the wall. You know, I didn't just have Ed O'Brien collages. I had, I think, just general Radiohead collages of the band, of the, you know, the logo with the kind of manic smiling monster. And Hail to the Thief came out like kind of at the perfect time for a budding Radiohead fan in that time period, because by the time it came out, I would have listened to Pablo Honey, Benz, OK Computer, Kid A, Amnesiac. And I think Hail to the Thief is basically a reflection of all of those albums. And that's why it's one of my favorites. And to me, I would agree that it was Radiohead's peak. In Rainbows is where I started to really go off them. Although I think with any band that you adore, especially like a band that makes more complex music like Radiohead, I think it's very difficult to listen to an album the first time and get into it. And I think in Rainbows, like so many of the other albums, you need more listeners to appreciate it. And I definitely appreciate it more now. But I think with Hail to the Thief, it is an album that I listened to and re-listened. And I just haven't had that with a Radiohead album since. And then The King of Limbs to me was a disaster. A Moonshine Pool, I was like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, they're coming back. There's some good songs on here. But again, I didn't listen to that album that much. Like I got sick of it pretty quickly. So for me, Hail to the Thief is the purest Radiohead for me, because of that. So yeah, it's called Hail to the Thief because it's all kind of related to George W. Bush, which is also kind of influencing Kid A and Amnesiac themes as well. Because there was protesters, you know, mocking the Hail to the Chief American presidential anthem. Although I think they didn't want the album to just be about the US politics. It's apparently about the rise of doublethink and general intolerance and madness. So not just the US. And what I hadn't realized, because I hadn't geeked out about this in a while, it was recorded in only 2 weeks in LA, whereas Kid A and Amnesiac, it took bloody ages. And while Kid A and Amnesiac were very electronic, and that's why it took them so long tinkering around with it, they wanted to make this album that was this in between, like it's electronic, but we want to make it sound live. And I think maybe again that's why I like it so much, because Radiohead is such a good live band, and that kind of comes across. I found it quite funny that Ed O'Brien said that it was the first album where at the end of making it, we didn't want to kill each other. Even though apparently afterwards, like they had lots of issues on how they wanted to do it. And actually, like legacy wise, they mostly don't like it. Like Tom York said, "Oh, I think we had a meltdown when we put it together. I take off Backdrifts. We suck Young Blood. I Will in Punch Up at Wedding." Legacy wise, they all have issues with it. So yeah, Tom York said that he thought they had a meltdown. He wanted to remove a bunch of songs. Colin Greenwood said that lots of them were unfinished. And even Nigel Godrich said there's some great moments on there, but too many songs. But it's probably my least favorite of all the albums. It didn't really have its own direction. It was almost like a homogeny of previous work. Maybe that's its strength. So yes, I'm actually sort of with you there, Nigel. And I'd kind of forgotten about this because I think of what came afterwards with In Rainbows, but it was leaked. It was leaked online. And yeah, they were pretty pissed off, and that's why it was kind of brought forward, and that was what inspired the whole, you know, In Rainbows pay what you want situation. But basically, I remember looking forward to this album like a child at Christmas, getting this album, I already showed Fran my special edition CD edition with the lyrics, going to a friend's house who was playing Call of Duty with his brother, and just sitting down, putting the album on and listening to it twice through with the lyrics. And I was just absolutely captivated. Because yeah, I was like, yes, this is pure Radiohead. Yeah. Kid A and Amnesiac were a bit weird to get into, eh? Like, okay, I you know, I Might Be Wrong came out. I kind of understand it a bit better now. But then when this came out, I really thought it was excellent. I know I'm in a minority. I know that most Radiohead fans, obsessive or otherwise, don't agree with me. But, you know, listen, this podcast is called Over Underrated. I think Hail to the Thief is underrated.
There you go. You've got out your system at last.
Finally.
I remember strongly the precursor of this album because I remember hearing bits from their pre-tour. I think they toured like Europe, testing out some of these songs, and I heard their awful quality versions through Napster, and I got excited because I thought, oh, they're bringing back the guitars. So I knew that they're going to be doing a guitar album, and that got me excited. And then I remember hearing the leak stuff and being so disappointed. Like I was like, oh, like in my head, you know, I was still like, relatively young, and I was thinking, oh, they're going to do another OK Computer, and then it wasn't OK Computer, which I think is what ruined it for me and my friends. I think we all assumed it was going to be OK Computer Mark II, and it wasn't that, and that's what hurt it. So listening back to it this week, well, I say this week, today, I actually probably think there's actually more decent tracks than I remember, and I would say there's maybe 7 or 8 decent tracks, and yeah, as Nigel said, there's too many. It does not need to have 14 tracks. That's far too many. They should easier or trimmed down to 10. If it's a 10 track album, maybe they could add True Love Waits. It would have been, because I don't like that.
True Love Waits.
Yeah, but the version they brought out on the last album, what was that about?
I agree. Yeah.
So I think that they could have trimmed some fat and maybe put on a couple of better B-sides and made a stronger album. Yeah, at the time, I loved There. I still think it's one of the best tracks they've ever done. I'm sure we'll talk about it in a minute. So, and then I just had a check whilst you're talking about, like, I saw them on that tour like a year later, and he literally only played 3 songs from their album in 2006, which doesn't show that fond of it, really.
But this is the thing, like, you know, I'm looking at the set list from the year afterwards where it's In Rainbows, and there's a lot of In Rainbow stuff, but they really, I think they are very good, and that's what makes them, I think, a good live band as well, and Muse as well, that we've both been listening to this week. It's like they are good at putting in stuff from previous albums and not also like just playing in a row songs from the current album. So yeah, I would have loved to see them in 2006. That would have been my perfect timing. But yeah, unfortunately, I got weird fishes, so there we go. The argument that there's too many songs to trim the fat, I just can't get on board, because there is stuff like The Gloaming or I Will, which is, let's say, more one tone, one, like, you know, one style. Like I Will is kind of a simple ballad. The Gloaming is just kind of synthesizers and effects. But I think, you know, this is why I kind of wanted to talk about it as an album rather than just picking songs off it. I think the selection of songs and the order of songs is near perfect, because you move from like, okay, 2 + 2 = 5. Okay, bit guitar, bit of electronic. Then sit down, stand up, fucking weirdness. Then Sail to the Moon. Right, we've got piano ballad now, and it keeps wrong-footing you each time. And when you look at each song as a whole, Drunk Punch Up at a Wedding, jazz, like there's everything there. And I think, given how much of a left turn Kid A and Amnesiac were, and if there were hints that it was going to be a bit of a return to normal, I think it isn't OK Computer Mark II, but it isn't a million miles away from that sound. But to me, because I like the electronic Radioheads, that's why I really like it.
It is strange because I remember buying Kid A from the shop and going home and putting it on and going, oh. But I remember liking Kid A. Like, I never hated it. Some people, I think at the NME gave it like a 0 out of 10 or something poncy like that,
Wow.
And I enjoyed Kid A. I think Kid A is better than Amnesiac.
So Amnesiac would be my second underrated Radiohead album, because I think everyone, again, a bit like Ben's and OK Computer, everyone gives love to Kid A but forgets Amnesiac, because they were recorded in the same time period. It's just a different selection of songs. And the way that they've reinterpreted some of them in I Might Be Wrong, I think is really good as well.
Yeah, that live EP with like spinning plates is beautiful. I don't know why they just didn't create one great album like Kid Amnesiac would have made sense. They could have.
Well, that's what they're doing now, right?
Yeah. But literally back in 2002, I'd make people mix CDs and call it Kid Amnesiac, and I'd put the 6 songs of each album I like to make a perfect album.
Sue, get some.
But so. The bootleg version I remember listening to, and I was quite sad, and it's my fault. I literally have never ever thought about going back to this album, so I guess it's a good thing I have today. And
okay, I'm glad at least you made you consider, because I think with behemoths like this, and I think as I said, with what you expect from a band when it's so big and it's so hyped, I think sometimes you need some space. So I will get into it. So that my first choice is the first song from the album 2 + 2 = 5, which it's from 1984, which I'd kind of forgotten about. But apparently The Lukewarm, which is the alternative title, references Dante's Inferno, which was Tom's wife's PhD thesis. And apparently the lukewarm are those in hell who did nothing wrong but did not oppose wrongdoing.
I believe that alternative titles come from Tom York sent the band 3 demo CDs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Lukewarm, I think, was the original title before he completed the lyrics. That's why they've got it.
So it's only today that I've realised what he's saying at the beginning, which is, we're on. That's a nice way to start, Johnny. I'd never kind of looked it up. But just like, Planet Telex is a nice opening to the Bends. I think this is a good opening to Hail to the Thief, because it starts with this kind of, guitar and, guitars, a kind of an arpeggio, and then this kind of like, probably I'm thinking Ed O'Brien playing like very high up on his guitar, Tom York's voice high. Are you such a dreamer to put the world to rights, strong. And then the way that it builds, we have the bridge and you have the dueling guitars, and then you have the chorus where every time I listen to it, I scream it every time. You have not been paying attention. And like, I guess there's no repeated parts, is there? Like with some other songs, it's verse 1, verse 2, bridge, chorus, end. I just think it's incredibly original, and you go through all the emotions listening to it, because it starts very gentle and fragile. And then you end up screaming, maybe not. And that's why I like it. Fran, what do you think?
Well, I mean, you've basically mentioned everything I was going to say, but I will add that like it's a live classic. It works great live because it builds up and the frenzy end. And I remember, but this is why I got so frustrated, because this is such a glorious track and such an old school rock and roll track. It was like,
is it old school rock and roll?
Well, I'm not saying old school. I mean like the 90s Radiohead rock and roll. And I thought,
I guess live you really hear the guitars quite well.
And so when I remember listening to the album the first time, I was like, that's a killer. Fair, that's a killer. Then suddenly that was it. And I think I so much wanted to have that sound throughout. I was just disappointed that was it. And I think that's why I think I hated the other songs more, because they weren't 2 + 2, or they weren't the Ver.
It surprised me that 2 + 2 = 5 is a single, though. Still, I have to say, because it's I think Paranoid Android was on Top of the Pops, but you wouldn't imagine this on there.
We've only, I mean, what tracks would have been singles? What, maybe Sail to the Moon, maybe? But is that too...
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so I'm glad to hear that at least you like it. And I think given that it's meant to be about people who did fuck all and just let stuff happen, I think it very much matches the mood of what it's meant to be about.
And your next pick? My
next pick is the next song. So I'm guessing one that if you were into 2 + 2 = 5 and listen to this is quite different. Sit Down, Stand Up. So I remember reading about this song before listening to this song, and I remember reading that, oh, they repeat the raindrops 47 times, and I was like, excuse me, what are you talking about? And yeah, the lyrics literally are: sit down, stand up, walk into the jaws of hell, anytime, we can wipe you out, anytime. It's so menacing. And once again, it builds in an unexpected way. So it starts with these, I guess, piano keyboards, sit down, stand up, you hear voices coming, and then the way that it builds and how it goes absolutely mental with the drums and the synths and everything. And it's like you go into a trance when you're listening to the song. But it's one of my all-time favorite Radiohead songs. And as much as I don't like jazz, I know that Radiohead are quite influenced by jazz, and apparently this was influenced by Charlie Mingus, and the imagery of the lyrics were in response to the Rwandan genocide. So on that note, what do you think about Sit Down, Stand Up, brackets, Snakes and Ladders, the alternative title?
Yeah, I had not listened to the song again since probably 2004. Mm-hmm. I wish the piano was louder at the start. I really like the piano, and it's kind of in the mix.
Piano's great.
I think it's kind of like it's a very similar structure to like a dance tune. Yeah. In a way of repetitiveness and
idiotech-y, right?
Yeah. I think if it was remixed to be fast from the beginning, I think it may have worked better. Again, I like how it does build up. I don't know if I played it much live, but I can imagine this would have been a great way to get the crowd going, because the ending with him saying Rangers would have built Jordan's up to frenzy. So I mean, it'd be nice if we could bring this back to the live environment, maybe speed up, add some louder piano sounds and different beats.
Yeah, I can agree with you that the piano could be a bit louder, but I think again it's kind of deliberate. I think it's to sort of lull you into this false sense of security. And I quite like the contrast of that very quiet piano with the which is drums, as you can hear perfectly in my rendition. We'd
like to hear a different remix of it.
I mean, I'm always up for, you know me, I'm always up for a remix. So why not? I haven't sought out. There might be some. I haven't sought them out. But yeah, I mean, but then you really can't sing along to the raindrops, can you? And that's not what I want.
I don't know. I've ever sung to the raindrops, but I should go back and do that. And then we're moving on to the most well-known track from the album.
Indeed, There There, which we already mentioned. So basically, I was torn between There There and Go to Sleep for this selection, because I thought it's not like it was overplayed, but it was, I would say, the best known song from this album. And actually, although I'm surprised to see this, 2 + 2 = 5 has slightly more plays than They're There.
But is that because it's the first song on the album? It does affect Spotify, I've noticed.
It does. But I mean, Sit Down, Stand Up has 10 million, but then Sail to the Moon has 13. So yeah, I mean, maybe it does, and maybe it, or maybe it, because it's a song with numbers in, and there are all these playlists where people are looking for songs with numbers. But yeah, I think because I was seeking out this album, like I very clearly remember Radiohead performing it, and you have Ed and everyone you have multiple members playing the drums in a way that you never had before. And yeah, so I had to be like, okay, is it going to be There There or Go to Sleep? Because my initial reaction, I think, because I'm that kind of person, I was like, oh, I'll put Go to Sleep because it's less well known. But I was like, well, actually, I think There There has more going for it. Like the drums are good, and like the imagery and the video as well, like the very strange stop motion video. I think it's more long lasting. It's more of a classic than Go to Sleep, which I think is, let's say a bit more classic Radiohead. So and yeah, I think when they finished recording it, Tom said that they felt that it was the best thing they'd ever recorded up until that point. And it's quite a long song, but it doesn't feel like quite a long song. So yeah, so as I think we know that you like it already, right?
Yeah, I remember them playing on the Jonathan Ross show. and watching them like move from like the drums to the guitars and back again, and just I think that line just cause you is one of the most beautiful lines delivered by Tom York. And although it's more up tempo than some of the songs like No Surprises, it still gets you. You still feel the emotion, and I guess because it's kind of like two halves of a song. It doesn't seem as long because the first section is quite different, and it speeds up when that Johnny. But that's what. There's like two sort of like guitar lines having a war. There's like the wow wow and the down down down, which is kind of like a bit like Lindsey Buckingham and Fleetwood Mac. I think that guitar line, and then the drums. Down down. And then I like the interplay between those two different guitar lines, and that's why I think it doesn't seem long because it's constantly changing, and then suddenly you get that wow 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 sound at the end of it, and it's over Tom's, and then Tom's sort of voice glides to a close. So I think it's probably my top 5 Radiohead songs. And looking at the playlist, those pricks did not play this in 2006. How dare they? So I have never heard the song live.
I think I have. Let me double check.
They play for Gloaming. They play for Gloaming. And not there. What are they doing? At a festival.
I would love to see the Gloaming.
At a festival. Come on, guys.
But actually, at a festival, like, okay, it depends on the festival, but
festival, a mainstream festival.
I think you can get into it. Get
he played Creep, so I'll let Tom off.
I mean, lucky. I think at every point of this song, there's something interesting going on, because like you say, just because you feel it doesn't mean it's very beautiful, but actually the little voices going, someone on your shoulder, don't reach out, like that's quite creepy as well. And it feels very natural when it then transitions into the warring guitar section, and yet it is feasibly a pop song. Like it's genius. I think it's absolute genius, and that is ultimately why it made it onto my list over Go to Sleep.
Agreed.
Over underrated. Sous-évalué. Überschätzt. Underskattad. Over underrated.
Good. Right, next. I have a feeling that here's where we might have some issues. My next pick is Myxomatosis, which I didn't just pick because of the title, which Fran and I were talking about before recording. He was asking me how it was in French and Portuguese. So Myxomatos in French and Myxomatos, I think, in Portuguese. Sorry. But I had actually never sought to think about what the lyrics were about. Because it's about this disease that they give rabbits when they want to kill them, I just took it quite literally. But apparently it's meant to be about Radiohead's relationship with the media and the critics, and how fame affected what they set out to achieve, which we were sort of discussing before. I just think it's like a beautifully brutal song. The guitar riff, it's so brutal, permeates throughout, and then when it's not permeating, you just have this very creepy, is it a theremin, I think, just going and Tom York going, I don't know why I feel so tongue-tied. And then as it builds towards the end and all the voices come in as well, like I feel like it's a quite good representation of madness, and I don't really think there's another Radiohead song like it, really, which is why I put it on there as well. And I do enjoy Tom York saying smart ass. So there we go.
I literally completely forgot about the song until today. And I enjoy it. I enjoy it. I think it's got an awesome fat bass sound. I couldn't work out if it was a bass guitar or keyboard. I think it actually is a bass guitar.
All right. Thank you, Colin.
Thank you, Colin. But speaking of members, I do feel sorry for Ed sometimes, because I can't hear him at all in the song. What's he up to?
But you know what? Him and Tom York have such similar voices. Because when you see them live, and when you hear Ed harmonizing with Tom, you're like, that basically sounds like Tom is harmonizing with himself. And I think Ed, I think is quite happy to be, not leader. And I mean, he's done a solo album now, and he's done his own thing. He seems like a happy chappy. But anyway.
So I don't know what he does in this song. I'm sure he's doing something. He likes to make sort of weird ambient noises on his guitar. I actually thoroughly enjoyed this, and I do enjoy the phrase mixomatosis. I can barely say it myself. I'm happy we got through that. I had no idea what it's about, but like I said, I think that I just because not all the songs were there. I think I got frustrated and maybe skipped a lot of tracks when I shouldn't have. So my 2003 self is a dickhead.
No, but again, I think that's normal. I do think that's normal. I forgive 2003, Fran. You have my blessing.
Mentioning Belgium, Held to the Thief famously it got leaked, and they were discussing about bringing the album forward, but they didn't bother in the end. But what it did do when they brought out the CD, it was heavily copyrighted, so that you couldn't record it onto the MP3, and because of this, in Belgium, loads of people couldn't play the CD.
Oh, why?
And it affected massive sales for some reason. I don't know why it affected Belgium, but loads of people in Belgium couldn't play the CD. It wouldn't work because of that software. So
I am glad that I was next door in Luxembourg because I didn't have that issue.
Yeah, so there you go. I thought I'd link to a Belgium fact.
Very nice. Yeah, because Fran had asked me before the record, did you know the Belgian link? And I was like, I don't know the Belgian link, but I'm always looking for it. So thank you, Fran, for bringing it out.
I will state I've not researched that. I've only read it on one source. It could be complete bullshit.
Again, the planning for this has been very light. Do not presume I've gone much beyond Wikipedia for this. I mean, but yeah, I think looking at the lyrics now and reading it with media eyes, it's even cleverer than I previously thought, because it's like the media is infecting them with a disease. And he says like, holding half her head, proceeded to show it off. I've been where I like, slept with who I like. She ate me up for breakfast, screwed me in a vice. Is that like, they slept with someone and sold a story in a paper? I think that gives it an even better layer, and I appreciate it even more. So yeah, I'm glad that you do as well, Fran.
So this brings us to the final track.
So my last pick is A Wolf at the Door, which Fran, I don't know if you're going to agree with me on this, but now that I've re-listened to this, it does remind me a little bit of Spite and Malice by Placebo that we were talking
I
about.
literally have that in my notes.
This is why we podcast. Okay, I mean, I guess it's because, right, this is Tom York's rap song, right? Yeah. And I think that when rock stars try to rap, very often people are quite sarcastic about it, but I think he does it very well. It's just it's nonstop. There is no break in this song, and it's so brutal, and it's so clearly about his fears. I think there's stuff echoed as well from Kid A and Amnesiac, where Morning Bell clearly is about kind of being scared of divorce, and here it's also I think about Cold Wives and Sunday Papers, Cold Wives and Mistresses, Two Boys in First Class. Like, is it about kind of middle class problems? The wolf at the door is going to come and steal all my children if I don't pay the ransom. Clearly, like he's got shit on his mind. Even though I think from the analysis they're like, it's like a fable. As with so many of the other bits, the wolf is the ruthless personification of the everyday capitalist struggle. Okay, that's not why I enjoy. I enjoy it because I just think lyrically it's amazing. It's again an extremely original Radiohead song, and it works perfectly. So, Fran, what do you think?
Yeah, I read that he wrote this on a train, and there was pricks in first class carriage being drunk, which is where that rant came from. It's a rap of sorts, but he's not doing like a Simon Le Bon doing Public Enemy. He's not putting on an American twang to sing like a dad.
No. It's very much his interpretation of it. Yeah,
that's why it's not awkward, embarrassing. So you can get away with it. And yeah, like I think when I first heard it, I thought, this is a bit weird. But I think I enjoy his flow. I love the bass. I love the glide down from the chorus. It sort of gets quieter, and he brings in some harmonies. It is like a contrast of styles. It's kind of filmic as well when he at the end of it, when it was his harmonies. And we all know that Radiohead like to create a filmic soundtrack. I thought I should hate this when I listened to the album, but this was always in. I used to always say there's 4 tracks on the album, the singles and this, and that was it. I now retract that, and I would now say I probably like 7 or 8 tracks. So I would say I prefer this to Amnesiac. I prefer this to the last 2 albums easily. I still prefer In Rainbows I know you don't.
Ooh.
But I'm
Ooh.
curious, what is it about In Rainbows you don't like?
So I think In Rainbows, it's just quieter, right? Like it is a quieter album. And that's just not my style. You know, what are the kind of faster songs on In Rainbows? Okay, you've got 15 Step,
Body Snatchers.
Body Snatchers, but I'm not a big fan of Body Snatchers. I think Reckoner is beautiful. I think like Reckoner is one of my all-time favorites, brings me to tears, etc., etc. And Videotape, strangely moving as well. And I've watched, honestly, YouTube videos about like the special time signature in Videotape and why on this particular concert Tom York played it wrong because it's so complicated. But I think In Rainbows to me is like Hail to the Thief to You Now, which is some great songs, but I'm never going to listen to it as an album because I skip a lot. Like not really a fan of Nude, not really a fan of Jigsaw Falling Into Place or All I Need, Weird Fishes as well, Take It or Leave It.
How about the extra? Because I count the whole both versions on one. Yeah.
I think the bonus CDs of In Rainbows are better than In Rainbows.
Yeah, to me, because I think they all sort of came out at the same time, including that Adam Buxton film session in the basement when they're doing Ceremony and the Headmaster Ritual. So I guess I probably haven't listened to In Rainbows as the standard album in a long time. So in my head, that's all the same era. And that's the last time the true Radiohead existed to me.
Yeah, I that I can understand. Especially the King of Limbs. I mean, what a disappointment. Yeah. What a disappointment.
Watching him dance to that video didn't help either.
I quite enjoyed Tom York dancing. And what's the song, the Atoms for Peace song that he dances in with the dancer mirroring his moves? I think it's genuinely beautiful.
I don't think I've seen that. I know that's his album, A Flea.
Really?
Yeah?
Oh, okay. I'm gonna immediately after the recording, I'm gonna send you the video because honestly, it's quite interesting because it's basically it's a woman dancing dressed like him. And she is obviously a professional dancer, and he obviously isn't. Like, you know, you can tell that she is making much more complex moves. But the song is one of my favorite Atoms for Peace songs as well. Yeah, I think it's really good. But yeah, going back to Wolf at the Door, I think what a bold closing statement to an album as well. Like, oh, we're going to close this album with a song that's like snarky, rapping, you know, relentless, not hopeful. And you said filmic, absolutely. Like the lyrics, I think I might still know the lyrics off by heart. I definitely did the thing of like, I'm going to sit down and learn these lyrics off by heart. And it's, not as easy as you think. But yeah, walking like giant cranes and with my x-ray eyes, I strip you naked in a tight little world. Who are you on the list? Stepford wives, who are we to complain? Investments and dealers, cold wives and mistresses, cold wives and Sunday papers, city boys and first class. Like, just it does not end. And yeah, it's Tom York at his grumpiest and probably most vulnerable and truthful.
It does kind of feel like there's 3 different eras of Radiohead, isn't there? When people say, "Oh, do you like Radiohead?" It's like, well, okay, well, which one? If it's Radiohead from the past 10 years, probably would say they're amazing. I love Burn the Witch. I thought it was a brilliant track. But yeah, I mean, I've literally not bought the last 2 albums. I have made a stand.
See, I think I have them all. I have them all on CD, even King of Limbs. I think my favorite from the Moonshine Pool was Identikit. They can do whatever the fuck they want. But you know, so are you now reconsidering Hail to the Thief as a Radiohead album? It sounds like you are. Okay,
I would say previously to this chat, I would describe it as a 2-star out of 5 album. I think it's just become a 3-star album. So it's gained a star. It's gained a star.
I hope it makes it to 4 on a proper re-listen, but I'm not going to hold my breath.
Do you know what? I'm going to see if I can hear these tracks live, because I think they would sit down stand up would be a decent live track. It'd be interesting if they have done that live, because I preferred a lot of the Kid A tracks live, so it'd be interesting.
Yeah, so okay, I'm very glad that I maybe moved the dial a little bit for Hail to the Thief. And as much as I had to play the role of like, where are the Bends? I think the Bends has some incredible songs on it, and yeah, I don't really listen to it as an album, but I guess similar to you and In Rainbows, that era with the My Iron Lung EP, I think, it produced some great songs and it had some great contrasts. So, we disagreed a little bit, but had a great time all around, I think.
Yeah, and I probably not listened to any Radiohead in a long, long time.
But this is the thing. I think when there's a band like that, I think I listened to Radiohead to death, to absolute death, and had to take like quite a big break from them. I probably barely listened to Radiohead in the tens. And I think very often when I do with a band like Radiohead, with a band like Muse, you listen either to like an album or songs here and there. And what's been really interesting is to actually go and listen to more than that, like go beyond, because I think there's whole swathes of Radiohead that I've also not really gone back to. Like, it's been a very long time since I listened to In Rainbows as an album, and I think it's worth doing and worth considering, and with a distance and with less hatred in our hearts.
So thank you for listening, guys. Get in touch if you have any albums or artists you want us to cover. And Babs, any final words? Get
in touch for that, but do not get in touch to tell us what your favorite Radiohead album is if it's not one of those two and you want to argue with us, because we know this is futile and this is a controlled conversation. Okay, so you think OK Computers at best, fantastic, good for you. I can agree with you somewhat, but yeah, don't get in touch on that. Thank you, which means that now everyone will, but there we
go. So this is goodbye from me,
and goodbye from me. Ciao.
Bye.
Over underrated. Sous-évalué. Überschätzt. Överunderskattad. Over underrated.
So I hope you enjoyed that Radiohead special. I think I'd be quite keen on doing more specials in future for bands that we quite like. If you have any suggestions on some of those bands to have an album off with, you can get in touch with us on @overunderatedmusicpod on Instagram, @OUmusicpod on Twitter, or you can email us overunderatedmusicpod@gmail.com. Happy albuming, happy Radioheading, and happy rest of 2021 or 2022, depending on when this comes out. Bye.